Divorces of Reddit. When did you know your marriage was over? When our power was shut off but he had just purchased a new fun car for himself 3 weeks after totaling his other fun car. I had no idea we were so behind on the bills because he insisted on always being in charge of finances since I just stayed home and didn't work. I opened up my own bank account the next day and put $20 he had given me for groceries in it. Started cleaning houses during the day while my mom watched my kids. Left 6 months later. I opened up my own bank account the next day and put $20 he had given me for groceries in it. Started cleaning houses during the day while my mom watched my kids. Left 6 months later. I don't know you but I'm proud of you. That's awesome. Please tell me you're happier now. Good for you. I'm proud of you. Signed, Random Internet Big Sister. My wife wanted a break. We'd been married around a year at that point, so I moved out. After about a week, I came back to collect some items and while tidying up I found there was a couple of condoms in the bin sat right on top. No saving that train wreck of a marriage. Honestly, she did me a favor. 1 year of marriage and already. Some people treat marriage like level 2 of a relationship. Most times when partners say they want a break, they are seeing someone else and don't want to feel guilty of cheating. That's from my experience though. When I realized that for months I had been trying to guess what mood she'd be in when I got home from work so I could enter the house appropriately and not make her any angrier than she'd already be. Oh my gosh, yes. Not with a wife but with a family member. Trying to guess their mood and walking on eggshells. I can't stand that. Story of my entire childhood. My husband said this to me a year after we started dating. It was finally the push I needed to get help for my depression. I lost some amazing friends over my depressions, but hearing this was the push I needed to get help. I am sorry you had to live on the other side of that. Must have been very stressful. It was after the 3rd time of losing her temper and trashing the house, including throwing a guitar stand at my work laptop and breaking it. She went to her mom's for 2 weeks and I realized I was much happier without her around. After a week I told her I wanted a divorce. Moral of the story, don't be with someone who thinks violence is an appropriate answer to problems. Did you know before you married, the violence part? Absolutely not. She's now been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which explains a lot. I walked in on my husband in bed with another woman in my house, and I say my house because I made the entire down payment and paid the mortgage. I moved in with my parents for a bit while he stayed living in the house. I would have panic attacks every time I went in the house after. I continued to pay all the bills for him to live there. We were going to try and work things out. We had been together for so long that we didn't want to throw it all away over one mistake. But while I was paying all of the bills for him to keep living in the house while I was living at my parents', he booked a trip to Las Vegas. Las Vegas was my dream trip and he never made an effort to go with me. He told me he would cancel the trip to work on things and I believed he would. Which was stupid on my part because he always lied to me. About a week before he was supposed to go he stopped talking to me. He told me he was going the day he flew out and the same evening I went and signed a lease for an apartment. When he got home he begged me to work things out. Said the trip wasn't worth it and said everything he could to try and get me back. The house sold in February and we were divorced a year later. My wife said, I'm her second husband, that she knew her first marriage was over when her husband admitted he allowed their 2 children to spend several dozen overnights with his stepfather, a man who had molested her husband and his brother when they were children. He never told her what happened to him, and when she finally figured it out she flipped her shit. Took another 3-4 years for that marriage to stagger across the finish line. OMG, I would have been so mad. He let his kids stay the night with the person that molested him several times. WTF. Depressingly common with abused children. They internalize that they were to blame for the abuse and deserved it. Since their own children are innocent, then there's no way the abuse would continue. Spoiler, it does. There's also a degree of appeasement in it. Abused children tend to be unloved by their abusers, or else the affection is conditional, so they spend their lives trying to earn their abuser's love. It doesn't work. When I should have known, my spouse sent me an email that said he didn't love me anymore. When I actually knew, he announced his engagement to an 18-year-old a few days after the divorce papers we signed. I was a little slow there. On point and hopefully gives you a laugh. Meet your second wife. https://yahoo.be/mggd1b quick. Medical issue. Hemorrhaged all over bathroom floor. He was at work. I didn't bother calling because I knew he wouldn't bother coming home. When I did tell him later that day, I might as well have told him I'd had a minor headache for all the interest he showed. Yep, I'm much better now. When she hid and lied, multiple lies, about a $35K credit card debt at 29% interest rate. Then threw a tantrum because I said she shouldn't go on a mini vacation with her friend and our children. I wasn't allowed to go to the Baltimore Aquarium. They stayed at a $250 night hotel. I had enough hotel points for everyone to stay at the Holiday Inn for free. Then threw a tantrum because I said we should eat at home rather than Outback Steakhouse. I offered to cook. $35K debt, 29% interest. Holy shit, were you able to pay it off? Had to refinance the house to pay it off. Only owed $36K. Had to do refinance it again to buy her out of her equity when we got divorced. Sad thing is we had good income, like $175K a year at the time. We weren't living in some terribly expensive city. When I realized how much abuse I took on a continuous basis, it wasn't physical much, but I would get things thrown at me. Cops came once because the neighbors once thought I was abusing her. She admitted to the cops that it was her throwing things and put a hole in the wall with the shoe she tossed. Don't worry, the cops asked me what I did to piss her off, told us to keep it down and left. A majority of the abuse was verbal. I could never earn enough money. When I worked over, I was never home and she felt lonely. When I was home I couldn't get everything done she wanted me to do to her level of satisfaction. What made me finally wake up? One of my coworkers said something causally, man, she treats you like shit. That is what made me wake up and seek a lawyer. That divorce was the most costly and brutal thing I've ever gone through. Still paying on it, and will be for years to come. It's so wrong that you can't use the cops' visits to prove she was abusive. If someone was throwing things on you, then it was physical. The first time he physically abused me, I had put up with a lot before that. Verbal abuse, emotional abuse, etc. But I told him before we were ever married, if he ever laid a hand on me, I'd be gone that same day. He acted surprised. He acted confused. He cried. He begged, but I stuck to my word. I've watched too many friends' family members stay in abusive relationships because after the first time, they were trapped in the cycle of abuse followed by penitence. By the he loves me, but he hurts me. I knew these men and women were strong and fierce, and if they were stuck in abuse, even with all their strength, how could I possibly avoid the trap if it happened to me? I knew I wouldn't be strong enough to leave if I stayed past the first time. Because with abuse, it's always a first time, meaning there will be a second and third and fourth. So I left, and I'm not sorry, because it justified every time I thought I was overreacting or being dramatic, every time I felt like I was the problem, when really it was him all along. This is 100% what you do if someone raises a hand to you. When we were discussing trying for a baby and she hit me with, for a while I thought I didn't want kids, but I've realized I just don't want kids with you. We were living with her parents so we could afford for her to be a stay-at-home mom. I was very unhappy living with her parents and told her I wanted to move out. She said the only way that was happening was if I doubled my income because she wasn't going to work. So I moved out without her. Similar situation with my ex-husband. We lived with my parents. We both worked full-time. I hated living with my parents. Want to move out. We could have easily afforded rent and kept saving for down payment on a house. He didn't. He wanted to stay there for the free rent and babysitting. I packed his shit and took it to his mom's house. He still lives with her 8 years later. I moved out of my parents' house within a year and haven't been back except to visit on holidays. When our therapist told him to spend a day not talking to me unless he had something nice to say, and he replied, but what if I need to give her feedback? Feedback? Was he your fucking boss? JFC, I'd hate to meet his parents. LOL, my boyfriend is like this. Anytime I bring something up about our relationship or express my needs, it's, thank you for the feedback. Dude, I am not your boss. Can we talk about our relationship? Oh my god, glad you're divorced, and I hope you're doing well. He sounds absolutely horrid. When I ended up in therapy with his mom instead of him. When I found myself wishing he was dead just so I wouldn't have to be married. Now that we're divorced, I can't believe I had those thoughts. He's a great man, a great dad, and my best friend. It wasn't his fault that marriage was suffocating me. If something happened to him now, I'd be devastated. But then, every time he came home I was disappointed that he'd survived another day. OMG, I have felt the same things and felt horrible about it. I've never told a soul. I would be crushed when I thought about spending my life with him and how I would be miserable through it. It took a lot of motivation to work up the courage to leave, and I know those thoughts were just me trying to avoid confrontation. When my 5-year-old son pulled a hotel key card out of her purse, and she had no reason to have one in her purse. We had some issues, but I thought we were on track to working them out. She was acting nicer to me, and things did seem better. It felt like someone had punched me in the chest. The day I got a call from his mistress, while he was in the room with her, telling me she wasn't his first mistress. Come to find out there have been at least 3 long-term mistresses. After a party at his parents', he hit me on the car ride home because I didn't have a good enough time. I yanked the emergency brake and got out of the car. I never went back. The handbrake? Geez, that must have been dangerous. Good move though. You never yank a handbrake, especially at high speeds. If you're going to touch a handbrake while driving, do it slowly and gradually. Treat it like a brake pedal edit. I would love to know why I'm being downvoted for this. You upvote the comment saying it's dangerous but downvote for me saying how to do it safely? Good one. When I caught him trying to throw a metal folding chair at our oldest child. When I would go down in the basement and pretend to do laundry to get time by myself away from her. When she slammed our bedroom door on her own forehead, yelling at me that she was going to get me arrested with the proof that I beat her up. I was recording her doing it. She was so drunk she didn't notice. I let her run with it. When she told her brothers that I beat her up and sent them pics of the bruises on her face as proof, I sent them the video of her doing it. They never said a word to me. When she began screaming at our 3-year-old son to shut up, I was willing to take her abuse. I couldn't stomach her doing it to our son. I wish my dad had your balls when I was a kid. Instead he turned a blind eye to the abuse my entire childhood. You're a great parent. You rescued your child at any cost. Second this. I know life is expensive and 2 incomes is good, but I wish dad would have left. How did you manage to keep your son with you? Just asking, because I'm in a similar situation. I'm scared my daughter will be with her, without me to help her. I'm scared for her mental health. When I read her texts to another dude about how much fun she had screwing him, and how quickly they could marry once she was free, got divorced 4 months later. Spoiler alert, those 2 lovebirds broke up when he wouldn't leave his wife. Edit. Holy cow, this got a lot of questions. Best thing I can think to add, due to this act, I learned a lot about forgiveness and making peace when bad things happen. There is a saying that you don't forgive someone for them, you forgive them for yourself. Once I genuinely forgave her, I stopped woe is me thinking, and started building a fantastic life. Also, I learned about a social safety net I didn't really know I had. Learning how to ask friends for help is a good trait. I am now happily married, have a kid with my smoking hot new wife, and have made many efforts to be the friend for my friends that they were to me. What did she end up doing? I am so happy for you, bro. Huh? I found out I was pregnant close to our 5-year wedding anniversary. When I asked what he wanted for our anniversary, he said an abortion. When I miscarried 3 weeks later, he threw a party for it. The irony of it all is that we got a divorce cause he knocked up another chick that refused to abort cause she was Catholic and needed to be married to him so the child would not be a bastard. He is miserable in another marriage and I have been happily divorced for 6 years now. When I miscarried 3 weeks later, he threw a party for it. Yeah, no joke. If I were you, I think I would have just murdered him. I guess you can say what happened to him is a fate worse than death. But, I'm so sorry you went through that. What an awful person. I love that you're happier now. Not a divorcee either, but I managed to convince my mother to file for divorce after a full year of my father refusing to speak or even look at her. They were living in the same house, paying the same bills, using the same utilities. He got angry at her over something I don't even remember now, and just decided to pretend she didn't exist. There is a Japanese show about a husband doing that to his wife for 20 years. Here it is. https://m.youtube.com/watch?j_0ylnfb_zo. What a mindfuck. And what an asshole to do that to another person.